Coming up, do shadowy and clandestine groups really rule the world?
No one disputes the existence of organizations with secret rituals and elaborate rules, but some claim their members have more than secrecy on their minds.
In the next 5 to 10 years, we are all going to live in a global version of Nazi Germany.
Could there be a group of puppet masters who have the world on a string?
Basically, all the conspiracy theories about secret societies wanting to take over the world are wrong.
When it comes to believing in conspiracies, Americans are second to none. According to True Believers, conspirators led America into the Second World War, were behind the assassination of JFK, and deliberately spread HIV. And sitting at the very top of the conspiracy pyramid are those secret societies that supposedly control the entire world. Conspiracy buffs are absolutely convinced that a few men wield more power than any president, king, or dictator. Who are these alleged conspirators, and why are so many convinced of their omnipotence? Join us for Secret Societies.
On a Swiss mountaintop, armed guards protect a secret meeting of the world's power elite. At Yale University, the scions of America's first families confess their sexual exploits from a gruesome coffin. In a smoke-filled room, a handful of power brokers manipulate the global economy. These are the purported activities of some of America's secret societies, groups with names like Bilderberg, Skull and Bones, and the Trilateral Commission.
What people were going to see is going to make their hair curl. What's been going on in front of their face and behind their back all their lives, while they thought a completely different story was unfolding.
A lot of people are familiar with the more famous names that are connected to these secret societies, Henry Kissinger, David Rockefeller, et cetera, but there are literally hundreds of top-level, very powerful people who are at the inner core of these secret societies.
From the United States' earliest history, secret societies such as the Freemasons and the Odd Fellows have existed. Their rituals, symbols, and secret handshakes have offered an endless source of fascination and speculation for the uninitiated. Now, according to a small but growing number of conspiracy theorists, these purportedly benign institutions are part of a sinister plot.
There is in truth a hidden hand that's working behind the scenes, behind all these apparently unconnected organizations. And they are advancing quietly, unseen, an agenda for world government, world central bank, world currency, world army, and a microchip population. And it's not done openly, because if we knew that was the agenda, we'd scream very loudly.
And you go look through history, and history is just one long list of conspiracies. In fact, I often tell people, if it's not an act of God, it's a conspiracy.
I've yet to see a clandestine effort by the so-called secret societies to gain power and to harm other people or to fulfill their own ambitions through that power.
To trace the history of America's secret societies and divine their true motivations presents a unique challenge. By its very definition, a secret society is secret, and its rituals and symbols are not easily uncovered. There are thousands of books, media reports, and internet sites all professing to know the true history of these societies, but few agree on what that truth is.
It's a kind of pseudo-scholarship. It has the form of real scholarship, but it doesn't follow any of the logical rules that are required by scholarship.
Although there are hundreds of secret societies operating in the United States, there are a few whose names appear frequently. They are the Freemasons, Skull and Bones, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, and the most secretive of all, Bilderberg. Although many of these groups have a public face and diverse membership roles, conspiracy researchers like David Icke believe these groups are all controlled by one elite group.
The structure by which the world is controlled by a few people, literally a handful at the very top, is like Russian dolls, one doll inside another, inside another, inside another. I call this web in which they all fit the Illuminati, the illuminated ones, illuminated into knowledge that the rest of us don't get. And that Illuminati has been manipulating for centuries to bring about what is now appearing before our eyes.
The notion of a few hands that surreptitiously pull all the strings is not new. It is as old as the oldest secret societies.
With some of the most famous people in the world today, you find that their rituals are an absolute mirror of the ones that were carried out in Babylon, in Egypt, and the ancient world in general. It's an unbroken span of manipulation from the far ancient world to the present day.
While it's difficult to pinpoint when the world's first secret societies were formed, cuneiform tablets from the Sumerian civilization may suggest it is as early as 2500 BC. But we do know that Egyptian pharaoh Thutmose III creates in 1500 BC a group that follows the modern definition of a secret society: elite members who perform secret rituals and possess secret knowledge they use to influence civilization.
They were the people that built the fantastic structures like the pyramids and stuff with knowledge that a primitive people would never have been able to do.
The reason a lot of the ancient knowledge had to be kept secret was simply because the knowledge they had would have empowered the people. And that is not what the ruling leadership desired.
By the end of the first millennium AD, one small group of 9 French crusaders form under the name Knights Templar.
Now, the official story is that they were created to protect pilgrims visiting the Holy Land, right? Well, there's 9 of these guys for 9 years. I mean, they're going to protect a lot of pilgrims. Of course, it was a cover story. They went to Jerusalem and they stayed there for 9 years, and they were searching for something, and it seems they found it, whatever it was. And suddenly things changed very rapidly. This small little 9-man organization started to massively expand.
Just what the Knights Templar find remains a mystery. The persistent rumor is that they find the Holy Grail, which is, depending on alternate legends, either the chalice used by Christ at the Last Supper or a piece of the cross he was crucified on.
It became one of the most, if not the most influential organizations in Europe. To join the Templars, you had to give them all your wealth and land, and they were signing up the noble families of Europe. They became massively wealthy, massively quickly.
The Knights Templar were holy, at the same time they were engaged in warfare. And because of these two attributes, they needed money. They needed money to pay for their warfare. And they had a real ability to raise money because they could call on people's piety to pay for their expenses.
For nearly 200 years, the Knights Templar gain hundreds, perhaps thousands of members from the wealthiest of the European elite. Although the total membership remains unknown, we do know the Knights Templar are able to amass a fortune they use to exert tremendous control throughout Europe by, in effect, controlling its largest private banking system.
They had the crown heads of Europe up to their neck in debt to them.
In 1307, the Knights Templar are almost wiped out. The King of France convinces Pope Clement V that they are not the holy defenders of the faith, but in fact are seeking to destroy it.
I think it was the King of France's desire for their wealth more than anything else, which caused him to turn against them. But the vehicle that he used to turn against them was a conspiracy theory. He found it useful, as have many kings and many other people since then, found it useful to adopt a conspiracy theory as a means to attack an enemy.
Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar, is burned at the stake in Paris in 1314. But a few surviving Templars are believed to have escaped execution.
the Templars went north, fleeing from France, to Scotland, and they re-emerged under another name, the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. Scottish Rite of Freemasonry is the biggest secret society in the world. Its membership pervades world politics, business, banking, the whole shebang. And it's the Templars under another name.
According to the conspiracy theorists' view of the world, the Knights Templar, fleeing persecution by the King of France, bring their secret knowledge, whatever that may have been, to Britain and form regional clubs called lodges in a new organization called Freemasonry. Modern Masonry, however, claims no connection to the Knights Templar.
Probably the #1 secret society in terms of fear and speculation are the Freemasons.
The Freemasons are the connective tissue that have carried ancient knowledge all the way through the centuries up into the modern secret societies.
Just about the only thing conspiracy advocates and Freemason historians agree on is the date of the first Grand Lodge meeting of the organization, June 24, 1717, at the Goose and Gridiron Ale House in London, England. The Freemasons were founded as an organization dedicated to the free exchange of ideas.
That might sound simple and obvious today, but there weren't many such places where individuals could get together and freely discuss the issues of the day.
And almost from its inception, there are conspiracy theories about the Freemasons' hidden agenda.
They were seen as subversive by the autocratic kings who ruled at that time, who fostered theories about how subversive and evil these lodges were, whereas in fact they were nothing of the sort.
Freemasons arrive in America as early as the 1730s, and very quickly they establish a membership roll of prestigious colonists.
Of the 56 signatories of the American Declaration of Independence, 50 were known Freemasons, only one was known not to be. George Washington's first inauguration in 1789 was a Freemasonic ritual. Look at the pictures.
At the same time that American Freemasons are supposedly using their secret knowledge to create a new country, a Freemason in Bavaria by the name of Adam Weishaupt forms a secret society known as the Order of the Illuminati.
The Illuminati were a small group that attempted to apply the ideals of the Enlightenment. They tried to create a just society in a corrupt world, and they wanted to do this all in a private way.
Within a few short years, the Illuminati grows to over 2,000 members from throughout Europe. The organization claims to be a forum for free thinkers to discuss political change. But to the rulers of Europe, it is a subversive secret society, and the Illuminati is suppressed just 8 years after its inception in 1784.
The Illuminati were simply closed down by the ruler in Austria, and that was that. They went out of business, but not in the imagination of people who fear it.
The Illuminati were not just involved, they were the driving force behind the creation of what we now call the United States.
Ike and others point to the fact that the Illuminati's symbol, the pyramid with an all-seeing raised capstone, is also a symbol of American governance.
The reverse of the Great Seal of the United States had this Illuminati symbol on it. And one of the great frontmen for the Illuminati in the 20th century, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, put it on the dollar bill, the same symbol. And if you look at the words above and below, it actually says, welcoming the arrival of the new secular order, the New World Order. And the New World Order is one of the code names for this Illuminati agenda.
Even the most endearing of all American icons is believed by many to be a symbol of the Illuminati conspiracy.
The most obvious symbol of the Illuminati through history has been the torch, or the lighted torch, or the flame. Illuminated ones, Illuminati. Now, the most famous lighted torch in the world is the Statue of Liberty, right, in New York Harbor. Now, of course, because of the propaganda, Americans see that as a symbol of they're in the land of the free. That Statue of Liberty was given to New York by French Freemasons from Paris. And in this topsy-turvy world, that is not saying in New York Harbor, look, this is the land of the free. What that's saying is, we're running the show, we're telling you, but you can't see it, can you?
I think it's all nonsense. It is nonsense that's repeated and acquires a certain reality because it's repeated decade after decade by so many people, but it doesn't make it more true.
The official Freemason history claims no connection to the Illuminati nor any other type of secret inner circle by any other name. In fact, some state that the Freemasons are not a secret society, but an open society with secrets.
Now, I don't want anybody to get the wrong idea. I'm not saying that all Masons are sinister conspirators. It's not the case at all. But what Masonic historians and authors have made very, very plain is that within Freemasonry, there is a small inner core, an inner circle, if you will, of people who have some knowledge of the true agenda. And then you have a huge outer circle that basically doesn't even know the inner circle exists.
Who are the handful of men inside this so-called inner circle? To find the answer, conspiracy advocates point to one secret society in continuous existence since 1832.
Skull and Bones is a springboard for a young man to be brought in, trained, conditioned, imbued with these doctrines, and then placed into positions of power to carry out the agenda of the older secret societies.
The ratio of Skull and Bones members who go on to significant positions of power, either in front of the camera or behind it, is enormous. The Skull and Bones Society does not operate in isolation. It is a strand within the greater web, and an important one in America. Presidents are not elected by ballot, they are selected by blood.
The Skull and Bones Society is founded in 1832 by 15 seniors at Yale University in New Haven, Connecticut. They establish a secret society with rules and rituals that remain unchanged to this day.
Well, secrecy has always been extremely important to Skull and Bones, but there's been a schizophrenic kind of aspect to it. For instance, throughout the early 1900s, the New York Times would often publish, sometimes on the front page, the names of the new Skull and Bones initiates. And the Yale class books would, up until the 1960s, publish the names of each class of Skull and Bones. Still, even though their identities were known, what they did inside the tomb was still supposed to be top secret.
The tomb is the Skull and Bones Clubhouse, a 3-story, almost windowless brownstone on High Street.
When I was an undergraduate, and I lived next to it, it's a very spooky kind of place, and you could project all sorts of fantasies about what sort of spooky and horrific things were going on inside, just from the sense it gave of the intimidating kind of aura it had.
10 years after he graduates in 1968, Ron Rosenbaum sets out to penetrate the confines of this secret society.
You would hear all sorts of stories about the initiations that went on, the kind of horrific psychodramas that they would put the initiates through. You were supposed to be able to hear screams, blood-curdling screams coming out of the tomb of Skull and Bones. And there were tales of strange sexual confession encounter groups, guys lying naked in coffins, wrestling in mud piles.
Rosenbaum attempts to interview the Bonesmen themselves, but most refuse. Instead, he gathers information from people close to the members, particularly girlfriends who have been given secret information, and some of whom have even been allowed inside. They describe an interior with all the trappings of a late Victorian Gothic fantasy. There is heavy, dark furniture, medieval armor, animal heads, and everywhere there are skulls and bones, including a skeleton bonesmen call Madame Pompadour.
If you listen to what people have said who've had some experience of that secret society, the Skull and Bones, it is more than just a talking shop. It involves the worship of the skull.
A number of reports say that there are niches with human skulls, and whose skulls they are. They're supposedly the the skulls of famous people, and there's one skull that was labeled the skull of Geronimo. The reason why skulls and bones figure so prominently in it is a kind of strain of imagery that dates back to Masonic societies in Germany, in which it was important for a youth to contemplate his death.
The Skull and Bones initiation ceremony is said to be held in April in the tomb's basement. One distinguished member serves as master of ceremonies. Once enrobed, he is known as Uncle Toby. The shortest senior is appointed Little Devil and dons a satanic costume. A bonesman with a deep voice is dressed as Don Quixote. Another is dressed as the college's founder, Elihu Yale. Still another is given papal vestments. It would all be rather funny if it weren't for the fact that among the former bonesmen are three presidents: William Howard Taft, George Bush, George W. Bush, numerous senators and ambassadors, industrialists like William Whitney, CIA agents, State Department officials, and publishing magnate Henry Luce.
For close to 2 centuries, Skull and Bones has produced the stewards and leaders of the American ruling class, the Eastern establishment, elite core of diplomats, spies, Supreme Court justices, senators, presidents.
The Skull and Bones Society seems to be particularly important for bringing American elite bloodline young people into the web and being initiated into the web.
I see the Skull and Bones people as, in effect, the people who created the American character. And they had their character formed in the basement of this strange tomb of Skull and Bones.
The reason that it is so secret is because if the people of America realized what its elite presidents of the future get up to, they'd realize that they live in anything but the land of the free.
Reports indicate that within the tomb, bonesmen operate on Skull and Bones time, which is 5 minutes ahead of the time in the rest of the world, which is referred to as barbarian time. Every Thursday and Sunday at 6:30, they gather for dinner in the Firefly Room. Non-alcoholic drinks are served in skull-shaped cups. Skull and Bones is a dry society.
Thursday night is a sort of general autobiographical session in which, in the basement of the tomb, in the presence of all this occult Masonic ritual of skeletons and coffins and death's heads and all these sort of things, someone spills the secrets of his life or tells the narrative of his life. But then on Sunday, there's a special session that is given the name Connubial Bliss. And in that session, it's a sexual autobiography. It's hard to imagine George Bush, the former president, chattering away about his early sexual experiences. Nonetheless, one feels that he has to have gone through it. It was required of the society.
Absolute secrecy is also required. In his 1999 autobiography, George W. Bush devotes just one sentence to his membership in Skull and Bones. Quote, "My senior year, I joined Skull and Bones, a secret society so secret, I can't say anything more." The secrecy, according to some researchers, is there to protect the fact that Skull and Bones funnels its initiates into positions of power and influence. In 1977, for example, George W. Bush forms his first company, Arbusto Energy, with the help of several Bonesman investors.
Skull and Bones is a lifelong society, an old boy network. It's a way for members of the establishment to nurture, advance, promote people who think like them, people who belong to the same kind of class, the same kind of elite culture. And so its power grows in a way after one graduates.
This is no old boy network. This is no, I'll pat your back, you pat mine. This is not, oh, you got the same tie as me, so we're okay. This is a vicious group of interbreeding bloodlines seeking to impose their will and their structure of life upon the global population.
My feeling is that Skull and Bones is less a conscious conspiracy, less a cabal than a kind of unconscious community of interests that people who have power in American society tend to gravitate together. A lot of conspiracy theorists take, what I thought was a kind of complex, nuanced view of how power works in America and paint a more lurid picture of a kind of, one world conspiracy.
Conspiracy advocates contend that the world is a web controlled by one spider, the Illuminati, that disseminates a globalist agenda through a network of secret societies. The inner circle of the web is made up of 3 organizations.
The Bilderberg Group, the Council on Foreign Relations, and the Trilateral Commission have an interlocking leadership. The head of the World Bank, James Wolfensohn, is a member of this network. So is the head of the World Trade Organization. So is the Chancellor of Germany. So is the Prime Minister of Britain, Tony Blair, and a stream of Presidents of the United States, Secretaries of State, the last 6 Secretary Generals of NATO.
There's something extremely dangerous and alluring about the combination of secrecy and world ambition. What could be more threatening than a group that is in the shadows and trying to dominate your life?
The actions that these secret societies have propagated through the last century or so have only led to wars, rebellion, dissension, depressions.
The oldest of the 3 organizations, the Council on Foreign Relations, is founded in 1921.
It is simply people interested and involved in foreign policy getting together to meet each other, hobnob, make contacts, hear new ideas, argue with their opponents, the sort of things that people who are engaged in political intellectual life do all the time.
Conspiracy theorists disagree and point to one particular event as proof of the Council's hidden globalist agenda.
There's no greater example of the way the Council on Foreign Relations has manipulated history than looking at the profound effect that the United Nations has had on the world and its agencies. And the United Nations is with us because of the Council on Foreign Relations. A committee of the Council on Foreign Relations wrote the proposal. They handed it to Roosevelt, and he then announced it as if it was his policy. At the first meeting in San Francisco to launch the United Nations, 74 of the American delegation were members of the Council on Foreign Relations.
It is this group, conspiracists contend, that from its founding has also pulled the strings of an American war machine.
When Lyndon Johnson took office and began to take Vietnam as his top priority, he was surrounded by what he was known as his wise men. And almost every one of them, to a man, were members of the Council on Foreign Relations and were pushing for that globalist agenda and for their agenda, which included our control over Southeast Asia.
In 1973, the chairman of the board of the Council on Foreign Relations is David Rockefeller. He brings together some of its most powerful members with elite private citizens from North America, Western Europe, and Japan to form a new 180-member group. It is called the Trilateral Commission.
Most Americans really first became aware of these secret societies with the Jimmy Carter administration because Jimmy Carter, the peanut farmer governor of Georgia, was brought into the Trilateral Commission back in 1972. And within 4 years, he's groomed and runs and wins as president of the United States. I once had the opportunity to interview his budget director, Bert Lance. And I asked him, well, what's the deal about the Trilateral Commission? And he simply smiled and he said, I was the only member of the cabinet that was not a member, and now I'm out.
Further proof of the group's influence, according to Mars, comes in 1980 when Ronald Reagan, who is not a member of the Council on Foreign Relations or the Trilateral Commission, runs for president.
And he pledged in New Hampshire that if elected, he would investigate these secret societies. He also said that he would never accept the secret society member George Bush as a member of his administration. So he rushes into the National Convention late at night, very unprecedented, and says, I choose George Bush as my running mate. So George Bush, the secret society man, is now in the catbird seat. And then just a month or two after Reagan took office, he's shot. And if it wasn't for about that much, it would have hit his heart, and George Bush would have been in years earlier.
And when George Bush does become president, his State of the Union address in 1991 contains a 3-word phrase that confirms for conspiracy advocates his secret globalist agenda.
What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order.
George Bush, Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton. When you look at their administrations, apparently different, they are all not just awash, they are drowning in members of the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission. So no matter what the name of the party in power, the coordinating body remains the same.
These are groups of people who indeed have influence and in some cases are powerful, but they're not meeting with the goal that they're going to act in a unified way and in a clandestine way to seize power. That's just a complete misreading.
But the specter of a secret agenda is raised by the fact that although these groups publish membership lists, agenda notes, and have their own magazines or papers, meetings are officially off the record.
To do it openly would get a big backlash from people. Hey, this is a global fascist state. We're not having this. So it has to be done quietly behind the scenes and brought about in stepping stones.
There's a distinction between informal discussion and a plot. The goal of the Council on Foreign Relations, or Bilderbergers, is to foster informal discussion, to allow people to have the freedom to say what they're thinking and not be accountable for it. That's very different from a plot where everyone's getting together and making plans to do something evil. And unfortunately, the conspiracy theorists don't see that distinction.
To become a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, you must be nominated in writing by one member, seconded by 2 other individuals, and approved by the membership committee and board of directors. Pipes, as one of the 3,800 members of the Council on Foreign Relations, says he speaks from experience.
There are sometimes petty conspiracies that take place in the secret societies. People working in collusion with their friends to push out someone they don't like. I've never seen, however, any evidence that any of the so-called secret societies want to take over the world.
The majority of their membership are very well could be honest, well-intentioned people, okay? But I don't think that they're truly aware of what the inner motivation and agenda really is. And that's where the true secrecy comes in.
But the evidence, say conspiracy theorists, is in the fact that the agenda set by these groups becomes reality.
I remember covering a Trilateral Commission meeting some years ago in which they advocated a 10-cent a gallon federal tax increase on gasoline in the United States. That meeting ended with their farewell, Monday morning farewell as usual. On Tuesday, the Washington Post came out in favor of, you guessed it.
When you've got organizations which bring together the most influential people in power from around the world, who meet in secret, who try as much as they can to keep knowledge of the event quiet, and then their policies become policy in fact in the world, then you start to surely ask very serious questions.
And the one group with the best track record for implementing the policies of this secret elite, according to conspiracists, is also the world's most secret society. It is called the Bilderberg Group.
The Bilderbergers are the ruling elite of the other secret societies. That's where the real controllers meet to decide the policies that they then take back to the other secret societies.
In 1954, Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands invites a group of Western European and North American leaders to a weekend conference at the Hotel Bilderberg in Oosterbeek, Holland. The meeting is held in secret, and they decide to make the conference an annual private retreat, which continues to this day.
The Bilderbergers are the most secretive of the modern secret societies. They're so secretive they don't even have a name, much less publish a membership list or anything like that. Now, some of the members are known because they've been observed at their meetings, and some of the members have talked and mentioned some people, so we do have an idea of who attends the Bilderberg meetings, which are heavily under guard, heavily secret.
Attendees are believed to include Henry Kissinger, Bill Clinton, David Rockefeller, Tony Blair, Peter Jennings, and an endless list of princes, chancellors, ambassadors, and media magnates.
If you tried to imagine who went, that's who did go.
The annual gathering of about 115 elite leaders is informally known as the Bilderberg or the Bilderbergers, after the hotel where it first met.
They take place one weekend a year. They usually take place in some Western European country. Every 4 years, I think they take place in the United States. They're nearly always at resorts.
Security for these meetings is extremely tight.
In my experience, especially in Europe, quite frequently the military itself is deployed. Then there's a large number of uniformed, armed cops.
Jim Tucker is a self-appointed Bilderberg watchdog. At the 1999 conference in Portugal, Tucker tries to get close to the hotel where the meeting is taking place.
And the cop bragged, we have snipers on top of those boulders up there, and if anybody going over that fence day or night, they're going to stay over that fence. So apparently they take security rather seriously.
The reason for all the security, say the conspiracy advocates, is obvious.
I don't think 120 of the world's most powerful men get together to play pinochle.
This is where the ruling elite within these secret societies go and gather and compare notes and apparently set agendas. One of the members of the Bilderbergers years ago said that they talked about opening up China, and within months, President Nixon had gone and opened up China to the West.
They met in the early 70s at an island off Sweden, and they decided that they were going to hike the price of oil massively. They then went to the Arab oil countries, which they also interconnect with, and they said, look, we're going to hike the price of oil massively. You'll make vast amounts of extra income, but we want you to put it in specific bank accounts that we tell you about. Okay. They then needed an excuse to hike the price of oil. So what they did was created the Arab-Israeli war.
The conspiracists' view of the world is that control is exerted through the control of money.
In this country, we operate under the golden rule. Whoever has the gold makes the rules.
Whether or not this type of nefarious global control exists, it is true that the Bilderbergers have been successful in at least controlling media coverage of their meetings. Leading media moguls are always invited to Bilderberg conferences, but only under the strict understanding that they will not report on what they hear.
So, for instance, Katharine Graham of the Washington Post has been to many Bilderberg meetings. One of the inner core Bilderberg members is Conrad Black, who owns 68% of newspapers in Canada, Telegraph newspapers in Britain, the Jerusalem Post, and a stream of newspapers worldwide. Not one word has appeared in his newspapers about the Bilderberg Group.
The steering committees and the bureaucracies and the meetings themselves had their own concern, rather intense concern, with not being mentioned in the press, and had this brilliant idea of co-opting whatever press they did invite, and then going higher and higher in the press as they invited it. But it's quite something to have more than 100 people attend a meeting one weekend a year, all of them at least of some importance, and have nothing in the mainstream press about them. That's quite remarkable. That, in a way, may be the most remarkable thing about them.
If you, and I have done many times, said to journalists, let alone the general population, tell me about the Bilderberg Group, this glassy-eyed look comes across. The what? The what? And yet, the major people, they are reporting every day on members of an organization together different political parties, different countries, everything, and they've never heard of it. And a few people can't control the world. Well, obviously they can, and get away with it.
But just how obvious this version of the world is depends on the eyes you see it with. And in the history of secret societies, perspective is everything.
In the next 5 to 10 years, we are all going to live in a global version of Nazi Germany.
If it's a conspiracy, it's not so much a secret conspiracy as the way power operates in America, the way an elite perpetuates itself in a democracy.
Basically, all the conspiracy theories about secret societies wanting to take over the world are wrong. Very rarely does a conspiracy actually succeed. Much more often they fail. And much more often than that, they don't even exist.
The Bilderberg Conference usually includes high-ranking American officials. Former Treasury Secretary Lloyd Bentsen was a regular for many years. Taxpayers allegedly pick up the tab, but their public servants aren't allowed to reveal anything about the proceedings. In recent years, the secrecy surrounding the conference has grown even tighter ever since protesters disrupted a World Trade Organization meeting in Seattle. Bilderbergers want to avoid any similar demonstration that would bring even more attention to their famous and famously secret meetings.
To discover more about this and other topics, please visit our search engine at historychannel.com.